Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for yet another Premier League preview live stream, alongside, of course, the latest and most important pieces of Chelsea news. It's a weird time at the moment. Obviously, we were all gassed and are all still gassed with our recent form and wins left, right, and centre. But of course, as is the life as a Chelsea fan, we had to be brought right back down to earth with a few pieces of injury news. We will get to those in more detail later, but yeah, they kind of always just ruin it a little bit, don't they? It's just what happens. Last year, we batter Juve. We end up having Chilwell injured. Now, thankfully, Reece James' injury is not as bad as Chilwell's was, but still. And now, yes, we might have beaten AC Milan 5-0 over 2 games, but we also lost Tafana. We lost Reece James. I mean, Kante didn't play, but we still lost Kante. And even Mason Mount had to deal with some sort of bruise, even though he's still expected to be available tomorrow anyway. But, yeah, it's just... You know, as the meme goes, we won, but at what cost? Like it's a whole nightmare, honestly. Like it really ruins my mood. Poor old Reece James. And what triggers me even more is if he is injured until the World Cup, but then features in the World Cup for England, I'm like, Southgate, just get effed. Do you know what I mean? Just go away. I don't like you. Just leave him alone, for the love of God. But of course, we do still have a reasonably important and big game tomorrow, away at Villa Park against Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa, who have been in absolutely diabolical form for a very long time. And as Bertram called it, and as we will see on this slide later, the Matt Law derby, which I found hilarious when I saw that. But Charlie, let me actually start with you. Now, we were already here, obviously, a couple of days ago when we were talking about the Milan game in hindsight. At the time, we still thought and hoped Reece James would be okay. Well, he seems to not be okay. Like... Is it just me? Like, I know it's not just me, but like, how gutting is that? Every time things start to go well, something ruins it.
Yeah, it's massively disappointing. Obviously, you know, I don't understand how kind of you can have an initial prognosis which doesn't seem to be so bad, could be back for the Man United game, and then suddenly it's like, oh, actually, hold on a second, it's worse than we first thought. Well, who are the first people that checked it out? Like, are they like, the medics shouldn't be, there shouldn't be that much of a differentiation, surely, between a initial look and a sort of a further prognosis. I don't really know. But the fact of the matter is, it's even more annoying now because obviously he tries to continue, which I understand he wants to try and carry on, but that probably hasn't done him any favors. And then the fact that, you know, he was going back on a EasyJet flight or whatever. All right, it's great, you know, it's not a problem. But if you've picked up a bad injury and you're flying on a basically a shit all leg room and stuff, that's not ideal either. But yeah, it's frustrating because, you know, it's the one position in the squad where we don't have sort of a capable replacement for a run of games. Yes, Ruben can play there and he could do that. He could fill in for 2-3 games. But there's 9 games between now and the World Cup. And they're coming every 3 days. And our choices are Ruben or Azpilicueta. And it's not ideal because if you take Loftus-Cheek away from the midfield and put him at right wing back, we're then one body down in midfield when we've got no bodies in midfield anyway. We've got Kante, you've got Jorginho, Kovacic, and Ruben. And that's it. Kante, as we'll come on to it later, but I don't even think of him as a Chelsea player anymore at the moment. He's just never available. I don't even think about him to pick with the squad and stuff. So, I mean, looking at it, and you think, right, take Ruben out of the midfield to play right wing back. You've got Kovacic, Jorginho, and you've got a still very inexperienced Chukwuemeka that could possibly play there. Although he'd be
theoretically,
better.
you would have Zakaria, but seemingly our manager.
Yeah, of course, yeah, the forgotten man, yeah. Or maybe we might see him get some minutes, but yeah, like it's the one position where we're in a big problem, and it's the one player that we just, out of all the Chelsea players, you just don't want to be out for a prolonged period of time, and it's frustrating. I mean, I don't want to say he's an injury-prone player, but I don't know at what point perhaps we start discussing that maybe Reece James is injury-prone. You know, he had quite a lengthy layoff last season. Obviously, we rushed him back because we're desperate for him, and he had a further setback. It's now another lengthy injury. I'm not saying he's an injury-prone player, but things are pointing towards that direction, which is never ideal. But yeah, it's frustrating. And as you say, just as we're getting up a bit of momentum, we have a setback, which is not ideal, to put it lightly.
No, it absolutely isn't. I mean, he definitely has a little bit of a tendency for injuries. I don't think, obviously, there's always levels to how injury prone you are. To me, it's like Muscle injuries, you can, be prone to those or not be prone to those. I think when we're talking ligament injuries, which happen on impact, I think then you're just talking about luck. I don't think at that point as much of a, like, the injury that he suffered now can happen to anyone, no matter whether you're injury prone usually or whether you're not, because, well, the knee just can't sustain everything. Do you know what I mean? No matter whose knee it is. So I think this one is maybe an exception, but obviously last year it was muscle stuff, right? And I think he does have a little bit of a tendency for that, for sure. I think certain players that have certain types of body builds, even Erling Haaland, like, obviously has gone, considering he's only 22, has had a lot of injuries. Now, not so far this season, but he's had a lot of injuries. And obviously, Reece James is not built like Erling Haaland in terms of height, but in terms of being a bit of a monster of a man, he does have that as well, carrying a lot of muscle weight around and just being just kind of a massive guy for his height, right? Maybe those kind of things. The more weight, the more power there is in everything you do, I guess the more likely you are to pick up injuries. When someone like Jorginho or Thomas Müller, they will never be injured because, I mean, as Thomas Müller once said, he doesn't have any muscles to tear. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, how can he get injured? So I guess you will always have that a little bit as a bit of a back and forth, but it's frustrating for sure. It's so frustrating. We'll get to Matt Law's latest article that came out literally 20 minutes ago about Reece James in a minute. But Bertram, let me get to you first. First of all, thank you for being here. We always appreciate it. How do you feel? Now, obviously, when was the last stream you were on? It's been a couple of days, for sure. But the momentum has certainly built, right? The momentum has built. Another great win, 3-0 at home, 2-0 away at Milan. We obviously had the 3-0 against Wolves. And then the injury news come. Have they been so drastic that you think that can kill the momentum again? Or do you think that despite the injuries, things are such in a positive way at the moment that will hopefully keep, the positive momentum going and positive results going regardless of injuries?
Well, again, thank you for having me on. It's weird because whenever we have injuries like this, I don't really... It sounds weird, but I don't really think of them as that catastrophic, even though I know that missing Reece James is terrible. And like Chilwell last year, it was, it derailed our season massively. But I think the important thing right now is the form we're in, winning 4 games. Sorry, I think my mic cut out. Yeah, winning 4 games on the trot, not conceding, being such good form. I think it's very important, and I hope to see it continue. I am also excited to see Graham Potter's flexibility here because at Brighton he was known for taking, for example, the wingers he had and turning them into brilliant wingbacks. So I'm excited to see how he deals with this issue as well. You look at the right side, maybe he has a place for Hakim Ziyech, who has, despite for the type of player he is, a great work rate and a left foot. So I'm excited to see what he puts into it. But I think, given the fact that we have the World Cup coming in, even though we have a stretch of 8 or 9 games now, I think that it's not that catastrophic, even though we have City and Arsenal in this period, which is annoying because you feel much more confident with them in there. But I think until the World Cup, I have an idea that we'll manage. I think it would have been more catastrophic to lose some of the other players. So those are my Reece thoughts at the moment. And I think it's important to just, not speculate too much and see what actually comes out after the report.
That's the weird thing because obviously we'll get to the article in a minute, but seemingly he has now seen the specialist, and that's the report we got. That was basically the same as what we knew or heard yesterday already. So we'll have to wait and see what that is like. I mean, I said this to you off air already, or did I say it on air? I cannot even remember. But this whole idea that, he will miss all the time for Chelsea between now and the start of the World Cup, but Gareth Southgate might potentially call him up anyway, just in case he gets fit halfway through the tournament. This is a piss take. Like, stop ruining our players. You already did that with Chilwell at the Euros. Stop it. Just leave our players alone. Just go away. Honestly, like that's. I mean, obviously, Thomas Tuchel might not be too happy with Chelsea after his sacking, but if he becomes England manager, maybe at least we'll have that benefit. Do you know what I mean? Before we get into more detail about Reece James, though, because I do have a couple of things to say about this as well, even though Matt Law also touched on that side of things in his little article, which we will go through. I do almost want to talk about N'golo Kante first. Like Charlie said earlier, and I tweeted literally basically the same sentence yesterday. I don't even feel him as a Chelsea player anymore. Like, the guy played 1.5 games this season of 13, 14 possible so far. And we have now learned that he will be out for another 3 months from now. 3 months. We're now halfway through October. That would only bring him back halfway through January. That is mental. And by the time he comes back, he will have only played 1.5 games between August and January. And that for muscle injuries. Like, we're not talking he tore his ACL or he did his Achilles in or he had like some serious or leg break, some serious injury. No, the guy had a muscle injury and somehow managed to be out for 6 months, essentially. Like, that is insane. And I mean, some people were at my throat, of course, because N'golo Kante has a lot of lovers, understandably so for his ability, but still, sometimes people are blinded by love, as most people will probably be aware. But yeah, I said basically, when was the last time we could rely on Kante? Now, of course, people came back at me about the Champions League. That's true. We could rely on him in that run, but that was the one 3-month spell in basically since 2019 where we could rely on him. That's one set of 3 months in 3 years. That's not relying on anyone. That's relying on him when he's fit, but that's the problem. He's never fit. We can't rely on him. And now we're obviously in the contract talk situation where there's a lot of talk and some people are like, nah, we need to keep him anyway. And some people are like, nah, just get rid. Obviously, we don't know the full depth and the full story in terms of what his demands are and stuff. But the reports are is that he wants either 3 or 4 years, probably like 3+1 or whatever. And we are not willing to give him that. We have apparently offered him 1+1, so a 1-year option with an option for another. He's already on very high wages. Obviously, deserves it when playing, but certainly doesn't deserve it when missing, 6 months bar 1.5 games. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't just dish money out like that. And I'll start with you, Bertram. Now, what's your perspective on it? Especially because we had the report a few days ago that he does want to stay in London, regardless of whether his future lies with Chelsea or not. Which would obviously whether that will stay like that or not, we'll have to wait and see if he actually does end up leaving Chelsea. But at least that's the report we had. And if Spurs and Arsenal are obviously his other potential destinations, that does make it more tricky, that whole decision. The fact that he could end up at Arsenal and he could end up at Spurs, the fact that what if he gets over his injury or he's there and then is just a dawn in our eyes, that's like the worst thing imaginable. But at the same time, unless he lowers his contract demands, and I'm not really talking about wages as much as I'm talking about duration, I don't think we should and can give him a new contract. Like, it would just be so unwise. We can't just live on nostalgia all the time. Like, we need to be serious. And if we want to move on and, get even remotely close to trying to compete with Man City, we can't just sit here and pay 300 bags every week to someone that's never fit, right?
I think it's tricky. The first time I read the reports that he wanted to stay in London, and it seemed like we weren't moving anywhere, and that it's only Arsenal and Tottenham are here, my heart sank. Especially because I could totally see, like, this is the most Arsenal transfer, especially like the old Arsenal transfer I could imagine. The David Luiz's, the Willians of the world who have gone there past their peak for us. But I think you're right. And I think no matter what he does now, unless he does some kind of Lukaku PR stunt where he absolutely goes in on us for no reason, I don't think there's anyone that can question whether or not Kante is a Chelsea legend or not. It's very difficult for me to see what can tender his legacy that much, because I think we have to respect the fact that we've had him for around, 6-7 years, and he's been brilliant for most of it. And he's delivered in 2 European Cup finals as well against 2 English sides. We can't forget that. He's put his body on the line. He wasn't ready for the final against Arsenal, which ultimately ruled him out for half of the season we had under Lampard. But he did it for us, and I think we have to respect it. And I remember when we signed him the first time, he was putting in man of the match performances against big teams when we were top of the league, and then he'd just go to some random guy's house for dinner. Those are the stories that really simplify Kante for us. But I think, especially for the contract talks, I saw the Drogba quotes this week, which I thought were very weird, about us lacking principles and stuff. And I think it's important for the club now to show the new direction and show class and be respectful towards him. Tell him we can't honor these demands and, fair enough, give him a good send-off, because I think it would be unwise for us to extend a couple of years of him, because as you both happily said, or not happily, if you both rightly said, we can't even consider him as a Chelsea player. Just when it looks like he's coming back, boom, 3 months, out of nothing. So we can't count on him. But I think the massive issue about this is the recruiting department, and we haven't bought a midfielder for like a real midfielder throughout this, because now we might be losing Jorginho as well. It's the same with the center back shit show we had during the summer. So as long as we honor him as he's honored us, I think there's no hard feelings, and we have to accept that he isn't really a Chelsea player anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. Before I take this to Charlie, I will basically put the same question to Charlie. Say theoretically Kante would change his mind and would accept a 1 year plus 1 year option contract. Would you give him that? Or are you at a point where you're like, as much as we love you, as much as we appreciate what you've done for us, we need to move on now? Because the thing that people will, highlight, say, oh yeah, we just lost Rudiger and Christensen for free. I'm like, well, that is true. Very different situations in N'golo Kante. Like Rudiger is literally in his prime. Andreas Christensen, well, the last few months at Chelsea were a little bit dodgy, but in terms of age and in terms of ability, nearing his prime, so not even there yet. N'golo Kante is certainly past the prime, right? He's like his body is not in his prime anymore. It simply isn't, right? So I don't think you can directly compare and say, oh, we can't do the same thing again. I don't think it's the same thing. But would you still give him a 1 year plus 1 year contract if he were to accept that?
Well, I think it's important to state that, it isn't my money, which, thank God for that. So losing him on a free,
then you would have that much money. So,
Exactly. And I think you're right. It is two different situations. I thought the Rudiger and Christensen situation were terribly handled because we would have been able to get sufficient funds for them. They're in the peak of their powers. Someone like Rudiger that he's gotten on a free, still mind-boggling. But I think each situation is different. And I would love for us to give Kante another year to honor the time he's given us. But at the same time, we're a professional football club. It shouldn't have to be a charity all the time. So I think it'll have to be up to the new medical department we get in to just see if he's up for it, because as you said, I think there is a difference between being injury prone and getting injuries that are, just pure, it's just unlucky. So, and I think we're at the point with Ngolo where he is injury prone. So I would hope, and I would like the new injury department to take a look at him and see if he's there. Because if there's a slight chance that he'd be able to play even half of the games next season, I think we should do it. Because I think he is such an exceptional player, and the things he gives us, it's just, you can't put it into words. So even though it's a terrible answer, I'd have to sit on the fence because I'm not at Cobham. So if he's able to play a sufficient amount of games next season, doesn't have to be them all, I think it's definitely worth doing. Also because we're shipping Jorginho off seemingly. So I think it would have to be up to him.
Ship Jorginho. What makes you think that?
I think, well, first of all, I think his agent keeps trying to want him away, even though he's kind of changed his tone a bit.
But his agent just say yesterday that their priority is to extend with Chelsea. That's what I thought.
Exactly.
That's why I'm confused you saying that now.
Exactly. It's because, well, when I've read it, he just, the past couple of years, it's always been, oh, we're in talks with Juve and stuff. And then suddenly he's just changed tone. I just have a feeling we'd ship him off. But I think it would depend on Ngolo because I think we would like to keep one of them ideally.
Yeah.
So it would depend on that situation. But I think we do need a midfield overhaul. So if there's a chance of one of them staying and Kante would be able to play a number amount of games, I think I would extend with him. If that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I mean, Raymond makes this comment. I'm not sure if you're trying to aim at just look how old Modric is, and he's not past it. But that's the difference. Luka Modric, do you ever remember Luka Modric ever being injured? He might be 38 or 39, whatever he is, like old. My man's old. But my man's fit every time, plays at 90 minutes every time, and looks like he's 24, like the way he plays football. Like, N'Golo Kante doesn't. N'Golo Kante plays 1.5 games and is injured for 6 months. Like, that's N'Golo Kante. You cannot compare that to Luka Modric, as much as we love Kante. Charlie, I'll ask you a similar question. Now, L'Equipe, obviously, the French outlet, reported that we will actually let him go on a free next summer. That I'm not sure how decisive they were in terms of that. Chelsea have already fully decided it. But what's your perspective on the situation? Obviously, we touched on it a little bit, I think, on whenever we last streamed on Thursday. But in a bit more almost detail, like similar question. If he doesn't lower his demands, I think we'd probably all agree, well, then you just have to go. But if he were to accept a 1 year plus another option, would you then give him the contract? Because I think at that point, I might. It's a difficult one because I think for when he is available, if we do go for the big buck trophies, obviously in a league that's never relevant if you're not injured, fit regularly enough. But I just touched on that earlier in terms of that 3 month spell when we won the Champions League. If you can have that 3 month spell again, And that is possible. He's just not going to have a full season.
That's a massive if, though. That you're taking a big gamble. Like, you can't rely on Kante to be fit for 3 games. So, yeah, for me, I think firstly it's important to say that like it's sad to see his demise and his decline over the last 2 years to 18 months. There's been a gradual decline in his performances and in his fitness levels. Yes, he's still been able to turn up in certain games and have a run of games, particularly in that Champions League run to Porto, where he was outstanding. But ultimately, the fact of the matter is now that we cannot rely on him to stay fit for more than a couple of games. And also, when he does play, his level of performance is nowhere near where it used to be. I know as you get older and you're not going to be able to perform at the same level all the time. But whereas Kante would be like pretty much 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 every week, there's now like he might have an 8 out of 10, but then there'll be like a couple of 2s and 3s in there, which is not what we're used to. And I think ultimately, it's just the end of the road now for me. We've got some fantastic years out of him. People bang on like he's a key player, but he's never available. So what's the point? What's the point of having him in the squad and taking up a position in the squad when he never plays? You've got someone there that why not let Omega have those minutes? Why not have someone else have those minutes? It's going to be far more beneficial to Chelsea in the long term than it is to offer Kante a contract out of sentimentality rather than actually making a decision, which, okay, is a difficult decision to make because of what he's done and how good he is. But ultimately, he's not fit. He can't be fit for us. So what's the point of having a player that isn't available to play the vast majority of the games? As you said, he's going to be out until middle of January. He's played 1.5 games this season. We'd be lucky if he plays 10 games this season. That's mad. Like, in all comps, we'd be lucky if he plays 10 games.
£290,000 a week.
And there's that. And I just think, look, if you go, obviously, he wanted a 3+1. He was close under the old regime to agree on a 3+1 deal. That didn't quite happen. 2+1 was talked about as well. For me, 1+1, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with it. But that second year has got to be based on hitting a certain number of appearances the season before. You've got to play, say, 20 games or something like that to activate the option for the next year. It's got to be based just so then, there's actually some proof that, he can actually stay fit for a consistent period of time, which we've not seen in the last 18 months or so. I mean, I would probably, I'd probably just about go with a 1+1. But ultimately, if we're looking to bring in 2 midfield players, which by all accounts we are, if it was a case of Jorginho and Kante leaving and say Bellingham and Rice come in, that's a no-brainer. It's as simple as that. As much as good
that is a no-brainer, that basically says we can't buy anyone else because those 2 are going to be so expensive. We're not going to buy anyone else. If we want any other positions other than midfield field, maybe we need to think about that.
If that was the trade-off, or even if Edson Alvarez or Moise Caicedo came in January or something like that, and then we added Bellingham, or I don't believe we'll get Bellingham and Rice. I mean, we can hope, but I think it will very much be one or the other. But if a Moise Caicedo came in January, which I think could be very durable, and then in the summer we added Bellingham or Rice, then Jorginho and Kante leaving is not really a big deal. So I think it depends on who we bring in. But ultimately, for me, you can't have someone in the squad, no matter what they've done in the past and how good a footballer they are, if they're missing almost half the games each season. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And it's a serious issue. It honestly is. And that's why it's so extra frustrating for me, this injury setback that he's had now, because there is obviously a chance that if he's managed better, that things can improve. He will never go back to playing 40 games a season. That will never happen anymore in his career. But if managed better, maybe there's a chance he could get to 20 to 25 games a season. And then you could talk about that being more worth it. But because he's now injured for 3 more months, by the time we could test whether managing him better would improve that, he's already allowed to talk to other clubs for a free transfer for next summer. That's what's making it such a big problem, in my opinion. We don't even have time to wait and see.
One thing that will help him out, and I think this maybe might accelerate his decision, he needs to retire from international football. I think that's the first thing, that if he's looking to kind of prolong his club career, prolong playing football, he needs to stop playing international football. The travelling, the extra games.
He's injured so much. He's missed most of the international breaks anyway.
Yeah, he has. But in terms of going forward generally, once he gets himself back fit again, which he will do at some point, like if he wants to prolong how long he's going to play for and have more of a chance of making an impact at club level, whether that's getting a new contract at Chelsea, whether that's being fit for 15, 20 games on the spin, then he could really benefit from those international breaks, not going and playing more football. So as hard a decision as it is, he's already won the World Cup. Yes, you want to win more than one, of course, but he's won the World Cup. There's not really much else
he
for
will
him to
miss
do.
this one, and then
He's going to miss this one
playing by the time
and he
gets
probably
to the next
won't be at the next one. So he's won the World Cup. I mean, for me, it would make sense for him to retire from international football and do everything he can to try and prolong his club career.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, if we're being totally honest, maybe what he should do is retire from club football and only play for France, because those games are rarely enough to play all of them. Wouldn't earn much money doing that, but he's earned enough money. He doesn't need the money.
He's got a few quid.
But yeah, I mean, let me just quickly highlight this comment about cranky bands, because I don't think it's a bad shout. The big question in what he says, we should revolutionize contracts, make them incentivized. We should pay him money for every match he plays. The bigger the match, the more money he gets paid. Mayweather thinks. I'm not sure about the bigger the match, the more money he gets, because that's very subjective.
So basically, a pairs you play deal.
Yeah, kind of. But, yeah. I guess would he accept that? Obviously, he would still have a base salary, because as much as he is rich, he's not going to sit there, oh yeah, if I'm injured, I won't get a penny. You're probably not going to say yes to that. But even still, even as a whole idea, is questionable whether he would say yes to that, because he's very aware that he gets a lot of injuries. So he's very aware that if he only gets good money when he's not injured, he will not get good money. And then some other clubs will not give him such incentivized contracts. So some other clubs might just give him a good contract no matter whether he's fit or not. Do you know what I mean? So the issue with that, I think, Cranky Pants, is the question of whether he would accept it. I think that's the bigger issue with that one. But yeah, it's a tough one. I take it 1+1, like I say. I definitely take Cranky Pants' suggestion if Kante agrees to it. Brilliant news. I just very much doubt that he wouldn't. But let's get to Reece James. Let me get the highlight the article by Matt Law up. It's again, there's not particularly a lot of exciting news and revealing news, what we didn't already know yesterday and the day before. But let's get through it quickly. It's not that long. Reece James facing 8 weeks out with World Cup hopes hanging by a thread. News will come as a blow to England manager Gareth Southgate, and leaves him with a huge decision to make, with the squad to be named on November 10th. Reece James is facing up to 8 weeks out. Oh, let me actually zoom in a little bit so you guys can also read this a bit better. Reece James is facing up to 8 weeks out with the knee injury he suffered against AC Milan, which has placed his World Cup dream in further doubt. Scans revealed James suffered ligament damage in Milan, and although he is hoping to avoid surgery, it is expected his recovery could take around 8 weeks, which I find a bit weird. So how can the expected timeout be the same whether he gets surgery or not? And if so, surely surgery makes more sense. Because if you're out the same amount of time anyway, surely surgery is always more likely to fix your knee than just sitting around doing nothing.
Well, it's the same thing with Chilwell. Remember, initially they wanted to wait a few weeks to see whether he would need surgery or not. Whereas if they just do the surgery straight away, you can get back quicker. The same with Pogba, that meniscus thing he suffered with Juve. He tried to go down the route of no surgery, and then he got a couple of weeks into it and was like, shit, I need the surgery, setting him back further. So if surgery is required, just do the surgery as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a bit different because clearly his injury isn't as serious as either Pogba's or Chilwell. So he didn't fully rupture any ligament. He has ligament damage, where the question is, and I would assume if he does have surgery, he would be out for a lot longer than if he doesn't, but no one has confirmed that yet. So that's my assumption, but we don't know that for sure. So that is a difficult one. But this news will come as a significant blow to England manager Gareth Southgate, of course, and leaves him with a huge... You already said that in the flipping headline, mate. Stop repeating yourself, man. Chelsea are yet to confirm the length of James's absence, and the 22-year-old is understood to have not fully given up on going to the World Cup with England yet, believing he could be back in 6 weeks. But the right wing-back will have to make an incredible recovery and avoid surgery to stand a chance of going to Qatar, with his only hope seemingly resting on Southgate taking James in the final stage of his recovery with the view of using him later in the tournament. Southgate did that. I don't care again. Kyle Walker, I also don't care again. Initial checks on Wednesday had prompted optimism over James's injury, but the player was sent to see a specialist over the weekend after a scan on Thursday revealed ligament damage. That's what I mean. You said he was sent to see a specialist, but you didn't tell me what the flipping specialist said. So what the flip is the whole point of the article? flipping Matt Law, man. Do you know what I mean? Along with this, with some of his Chelsea teammates, James was allowed to stay behind and spend his day off in Milan on Wednesday, despite suffering his injury the previous night. James flew back on an EasyJet flight, paying for extra legroom, and there is no suggestion that his extra day in Milan or private travel arrangements aggravated the injury. James will not play for Chelsea again before the Premier League breaks for the World Cup, as he attempts to make the fastest possible recovery, but there are now major doubts surrounding his participation. Chelsea are also without N'golo Kante and Wesley Fofana for a run of games up until the World Cup, but Mason Mount was due to train on Saturday and could face Aston Villa on Sunday after a scan on his thigh. Now, the first thing I want to quickly talk about is this here, because obviously I'm not sure if people saw my tweet, but you know, especially for the interaction my tweets usually get, it did quite well. I was basically having a bit of a go at the medical staff. I'm like, I do not understand how we just let him stroll around at Milan like it's no man's business, take an EasyJet flight home, short extra leg room. But if you've ever sat on an EasyJet flight, even the extra leg room ones have no leg room, especially when you have legs as big as flipping Reece James. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's still not a lot of leg room there. Now, what I said when I complained about this wasn't that it factually and definitely made the injury worse. But fact of the matter is, it definitely could. And anyone that says it couldn't is lying. And anyone that says you can't control the players, yes, of course you can. That's the whole point of a contract. You can't. Someone said, "Oh, a normal dude." No, he's not a normal dude. A normal dude can go to work whether his knee is done or not. Do you know what I mean? Reece James cannot. Reece James cannot go to work when he has an injured knee. So surely there should be extra precautions that should take place. I'm not even saying don't walk around. If anything, a bit of movement in the knee can actually be a good thing. But why not give him a knee brace? Like, I mean, Fofana had a knee brace 20 minutes after he got injured. So clearly our medical staff just has knee braces, right? So clearly we have them available. It's not like we had to get them made first or something. Why not just give him a knee brace? Now, in the end, if it didn't make anything worse anyway, okay, who cares, I guess. But number one, who can prove me that? Or is that just, you know, Chelsea covering their own asses for screwing up? Because how do we know? And number two, still, that doesn't alleviate the fact that, in my opinion, it's a massive oversight of a lack of precaution. Like, you should not allow a player that picked up an injury to just walk around and do whatever the flip he wants. And I'm not having a go at Reece James here. The doctor should be telling him that. He's no doctor. And yeah, maybe he should know a bit better. But if the doctors tell him you can, well, then he will. He's a young guy. He's a 22-year-old guy. Do you know what I mean? But I don't get that. I don't get that. And I mean, the next confusing part I find, I mean, we sacked the head of medical department. We sacked the head physio. But we haven't replaced them yet. The only thing we've got is some baseball Donny to look after our players a little bit, but he's not been hired full time as far as I'm aware. So who's even in charge of all the medical things now? And that's what I don't know. But I mean, Charlie, I'll go with you first. What's your perspective on this? Do you see my point where I'm like, even if in hindsight it didn't make anything worse, surely it's just an extra level of risk that really did not have to be taken to let him just walk around without any protection? Surely. Like,
well, I mean,
all of us have been on flights. You know, when you're trying to squeeze past people and squeeze through rows of seats, you know how easily you can twist your knee in situations like that. And if you already have a damaged ligament, is that what you should be doing? Like,
well, I mean, firstly, I mean, if the initial prognosis was the fact that, you know, it didn't seem that bad and he was going to be back in a couple of games' time, then I mean, I'm not a medical expert, none of us are, but I can't imagine walking about Milan casually strolling around is gonna cause too many issues. Yes, I know it's easy to look back in hindsight and be like, now that he's out for 6 to 8 weeks, and be like, oh, what are they doing? Why are they letting him do that? But at the time, the information was a bit different, but it seems, and so you can kind of understand why that was allowed to happen. They were obviously happy
at the time. The information still okay. It looks okay, but we need to have a scan. And they haven't had a scan at the time when he was allowed to do that. So surely before the scan, you should be extra cautious.
Yeah,
even if it doesn't look so bad.
Do you not think, though, that the medical staff, the manager and whatnot, would have been given the information that was available at the time and then made a decision? You know, Reece James employed by Chelsea. If Chelsea think, actually, no, you need to come back with us and that's not a good idea, they'll tell him that. They were happy for him to do that. So it's obviously been okayed by the medical department, by the manager, or whatever relevant parties need to okay this for it to be allowed. So I guess hindsight is easy to look back and criticize, but I suppose with what they had available to them, yes, you could argue that maybe they should have taken more caution, but perhaps they thought with the information available at the time that actually it's okay for him to go and do this, which is why they allowed it to happen. Obviously, subsequently, it's transpired that it was far worse than they thought, and now this perhaps looks a little bit stupid. But ultimately, I think it's easy to look back and blame, but at the time, I personally don't really see at the time with what was available to them too much of an issue with it.
Well, I do hear that, and I am also like, well, they will know better than I do. I'm like, well, fair enough, but so should Thomas Tuchel, so should Frank Lampard, so should Maurizio Sarri, so should every other manager. And how God knows how many times have we said, oh, they made a mistake here, they made a mistake there. It's not just football managers that make mistakes. It's not just football players that make mistakes. Doctors can make mistakes. Just look at N'golo Kante. The amount of time that guy was allowed to come back to training and playing too early is very clear, right? So clearly we have a tendency to allow players to do things too soon. That's my judgment. Now, to be fair, we have already sacked some of the people that were involved with this for players like Kante and also other players in the past. So, but we didn't sack everyone. So to me, it's just why take the risk? Again, I understand what you're saying, Charlie. If the information at the time is you're okay, but they can't be sure before a scan, and they haven't had a scan. So even whether you think something's okay or not, surely take precautionary measures to avoid potentially making things worse. Like, hey, it is what it is in the end anyway. But I just think it's just an unnecessary oversight, which I don't think would happen at Man City. Man City would never allow something like that to happen. And I think those are the structural differences why we're nowhere near them. Because we just don't, no one in this football club is consistently good. That's the players, that's the management staff, that's the medical staff. No one, like Thomas Tuchel was even complaining about the pitch. So even our pitchmen can't be consistently good. We need to just flip and get our fingers out our asses and actually start to be professional consistently at all times, and not just whenever we flip and fancy it. Like that, it just triggers me, man. Like, we're trying to compete with the best of the best. How can we compete with the best of the best if we're not the best of the best ourselves? I don't get that.
I think that's what he's trying to do, though. I think, Fofana going to the States for his medical goes to show that Bowley didn't have trust in that medical in the medical team at Chelsea. So he looked at the data, looked at what's happened over the years, doesn't like it. So they've been cleared out. The head physio or whatever, head of the medical department,
I'm happy with that.
Been 15, 16 years. So, yes, of course, he's coming in. These things are going to take time, though. To get the best in place and to then compete with the best, it's going to take time. And Bowley is looking at shaking things up big time, and he's going to make changes to the medical department, and that's fine. And maybe that will make a difference for sure. But look, I think it's easy to criticize. I understand why you're frustrated, and it is frustrating. But at the same time, it's not like, oh, if he'd flown back with the team, he would have only been out for a couple of weeks. It's not like, it's added 4 weeks. It's added 4 weeks on. So yes, whilst it might seem like a bit of a unnecessary oversight, at the same time, like, it's not like, oh, if he'd gone back with the team and they'd done X, Y, Z, he would have been back. He would have been back in a couple of weeks. But because this has happened, he's now missing 6 to 8 weeks. If that was the case, then yeah, that's a totally legit point. But I think the fact that it's not made any difference is kind of neither here nor there for me.
I hear you. And yeah, I understand that people say, what if, buts and maybes are pointers. And I get that. But to me, it's like, at the time, they didn't know for sure yet. They thought he would be out for 10 days. In the end, he was out for longer. While you're not sure, don't take risks. That's my perspective on it. And I think they took unnecessary risks. It did, in the end, that risk didn't come back to haunt us because he seemingly had the injury worse in the first place. That is the case. Fair enough. But again, they didn't know that, and they didn't do anything about it. They just let him do his thing. And that's the part I don't get. Bertram, what's your perspective on it? And again, I'm not saying everyone has to agree with me. I'm absolutely fine if people have, differing opinions on this. But to me, I just don't really get why risks like that are taken with players that are so important to us. Like, we're not talking Zakaria here who can't even get minutes anyway. We're talking literally the most important player in our squad.
Mate, sorry, 2 seconds. David Ornstein has just said that Reece James will not have surgery on his injury. A rough timescale of 2 months has been set, but he could be back sooner.
Yeah, so basically the 6 to 8 weeks essentially.
Yeah.
Fair.
Well, I
will
think
get that in a second. Bertrand, go.
Charlie, you touched upon it before that none of us are, unfortunately, medical experts. So, given that we're sitting here discussing now whether he should have been able or allowed to or not, shows that everyone at the club should have been doing that as well. And even though we all do love Chelsea and really hold in high regard, if you're Graham Potter and it's your job and you're earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week to win, you would probably put a large question mark around if he should be allowed to roam around Milan or not. So I would trust in a situation like that they had checked it even though he hadn't been scanned, because otherwise it's such an absurd story. If they hadn't checked it out, it makes no sense. If he's just been brought off the pitch and limping and has been asked, can I just casually stroll around Milan, and they're like, yeah, fine, why not? I can't see any reason not to. So I think we have to place some trust on the seemingly non-existent medical department that they have checked it and they have vetted that it is okay, as Charlie says. But I agree that it is. I don't know if you can call it incompetence, because I also believe that you shouldn't do things just to do them, that you shouldn't force him back just because he had an injury, because if you had checked it out and there was nothing wrong with it, I don't think there was anything wrong with just letting him stay, as it could have boosted morale. So I have to put trust into the medical department. Otherwise, it would make absolutely 0% sense.
Yeah, I do hear that. For me, the issue is we know that you can't judge. Yes, I'm not a medical expert, but I know enough about injuries to know that knee injuries can't be properly looked at immediately. Everyone is aware of that, especially because knee injuries tend to have swellings. And when you have a swelling, you can't do an MRI scan because the swelling skews the MRI pictures. Okay, so we know you will only have final clarification on the injury after the swelling has gone down and after you've had the scan. So until you've had this scan, everything you look at before is only a rough outside diagnosis. No matter how good of a doctor you are, you can only look at the knee from the outside. You can't cut it open and look at the ligament, what it looks like. And until you have the scan, you don't know for sure. And that's the period where I'm like, why risk it? I don't have no problem at all with him staying in Milan. I have no problem with him checking out Milan, sightseeing. The guy's injured. Might as well give him a day off. They're busy enough. No problem. But he could have done it with a knee brace. That's all I'm saying.
But the issue is then it doesn't
with a knee brace on.
But then it doesn't make any sense for me, because he is a very valuable asset. So I can't believe that they haven't done more about it, because as you rightly said, they haven't scanned him. So for me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
a bit like
that is a fair point as well. Maybe I should just trust them more, but it's just people like Kante, people like Pulisic, people like a few others that have just had reoccurring. Reece James last year. The fact that these things, that players getting re-injured and coming back too early, that happens so regularly at Chelsea over the last 2-3 years. That's made me lose a little bit of faith in a medical department. Again, I'm aware we sacked 2 major people off the medical department already, but without replacing them. So how do I know whether they're doing things any different? But it also is a fair shout. Maybe I do need to give them the benefit of the doubt while I don't know. But hey, here we are. Let me just quickly go through this article by David Ornstein to see if there's anything that he said outside of his tweet that is mentioned in here. Chelsea defender Reece James is not having surgery on a knee injury he picked up earlier this week after seeing a specialist. Finally, someone that actually explains things. Matt Law, take note. Although it is thought that he could be out of action for up to 2 months, this is a cautious timescale, and it will depend on how quickly his body can recover from the injury. James picked up the knock during Chelsea's 2-0 win over AC Milan in the UEFA Champions League on Tuesday. It will now be up to Gareth Southgate to determine whether he wants him in his final squad, with the hope he proves his fitness and participates as the tournament progresses. Head coach Graham Potter said before Chelsea's match against Aston Villa this Sunday that James needed to be assessed before putting a time frame on how long he'd be on the sidelines. He said he's due to see a specialist over the weekend. Until we get that, there's not too much I can add. It will be speculation on my perspective. Let's wait and see. There's no point looking in the doomsday scenario yet. James was previously caught. Stop talking about Southgate so much, man. Okay, so basically he did equally as zero information as Matt Law. Brilliant. Fantastic. All right. Well, here we are. That's that then. I guess we'll just have to... that's the triggering part for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, initially, I was like, okay, if he's going to miss the World Cup and then just be back fresh after the World Cup, it's annoying that he misses all the games between now and the World Cup for us. I'm not an England fan, mind you, right? So, but if there is a possibility that England bring him back, and there's a possibility England bring him back too early because they're trying to win the World Cup and he's by far the best right-hander player England have, that's why I'm worried. Because then there's the next medical department I have to worry about bringing a player back way too early. Then he plays 2 games to the World Cup, comes back to Chelsea, and he's out for another 2 months. That's what I'm already scared of. Do you know what I mean? Because that's just how tournaments go. And I also understand it from his perspective that he would want to be involved in the World Cup. Totally understand. I would too if I was him. But I'm not him, and I'm not an England fan, so I want him to be available for Chelsea. So I'm scared that he won't be. But I guess we will only know in due course. Just quickly to touch on it, I explained it with Mason Mount already. Mason Mount wasn't in training yesterday. Everyone was a little bit confused. It was then said by Nathan Gissing, shout out to him, that it was basically just a scan and a bruise on his thigh, and he should be back in training, and I think was back in training today, and is expected to be involved tomorrow. Whether he starts or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's a different scenario. Now, before we quite get on to the Aston Villa versus Chelsea game, let's quickly talk about a tiny bit of transfer news. Now, the Mirror, the Daily Mirror, did release I guess a story. Now, I talked to Pice about it. He's like, well, it's quite a small journalist. He spoke about Chelsea being interested in Pulisic at the time, but otherwise, Pice doesn't know much about him. So I'm like, okay. But yeah, apparently, Chelsea might try to get Nkunku earlier. So in January rather than only in the summer. How much more expensive that theoretically would make him, I don't know. But would you be at all interested in that, Bertram, bringing Nkunku in even 6 months earlier?
Well, yeah, like you say, it would depend on the price, but adding a player like Nkunku to our squad, it would make a lot of sense. It's quite weird that the stories come out. I think if you look at it from the perspective of next season, it would help him maybe to get 6 months of Chelsea before the start of next season. But otherwise, I think if we save like 10, 15, 20 million pounds of buying him in the summer, I think that's what we should do. Also, because then he gets a preseason with us. I think right now I look at our offensive qualities and say I don't know if I'd say they're all right. There's a chance they'd be all right, but if there is an opportunity to add a player like Nkunku midway through the season, I can't see anything wrong with it. Then I'd have to trust Graham Potter's chance to blend him in. But the issue is that there is no break in January. They should have to come straight in, and I wouldn't want him come in being a bit shaky, and missing chances, missing games, getting injured before, because that could hamper him next season as well. So I think I would be interested. I'll have to be honest. I would be interested. I would love to see Nkunku play for us, and I'd love to see it sooner rather than later, because I think he gives us some X factor, even though there are some issues with it.
Fair. Before I take it to Charlie, I mean, my perspective is for me, it's a difficult one because I don't know what we'd plan with Nkunku. That's why it's so difficult for me. Because I'm like, would we try to play him as a striker, as a second striker, as a 10, as a winger? What would we do with him? And to me, it almost depends on what we want to do with him, whether it's worth bringing him in January or not. Because in certain aspects of our team, I'm like, well, we don't need that right now. Like, fix it over the summer. Like, when certain players leave and stuff, then it makes sense. But right now, I don't see the point. But I guess it totally depends on how Graham Potter would use him. And I will have to wait and see. I can't make a judgment earlier than that. But hey, I mean, if Chelsea want to do that, I'm not going to say no. Do you know what I mean? If we're going to get him in June anyway, if we're then going to get it in January, can't exactly be worse, can it? But Charlie, what's your perspective? Would that be worth it, trying to get him even earlier? I mean, the whole, what Bertram said in being there for pre-season, that would already be kind of given if we do the whole thing pre-agreed, right? But that would mean he's automatically our player, well, before we even get to the transfer window. So he would be there for the whole of pre-season. Now, like Bertram said, he would have the second half of this season with us, which would certainly be a benefit, but not as big of a benefit than if you compare it to signing him in August, if he's already there in June. Do you know what I mean? So I guess then it's a lesser benefit. So I guess then even more so weighs into how much extra would we have to pay. Although with the form Leipzig are in, maybe he wants to just get out there as soon as he can.
Well, I mean, to be honest, mate, I don't think it really makes that much difference. I think, just get the deal done, arrive in the summer, have a full pre-season. he's going to be in the French squad for the World Cup. So I mean, do you really want him joining straight after the World Cup? Just let him finish his season with Leipzig. The deal's going to be done, and then just join in the summer. I don't think we necessarily need him in January. I wouldn't say no to it, but I don't think it's a necessity. There's other areas that need thinking about. A right wing backup option, a midfield player potentially. Like Nkunku's going to come, so just wait till the summer. I don't think we're so desperate that we need to get him in January.
Yeah, I would probably agree. It's again, yeah, if we have him and he's used and it works, great. If not, I think it won't be the biggest decisive factor of all time. But hey, I mean, midfielders, it was said, I can't remember which source it was, but it is said that we want 2 midfielders next summer. One last point of interest on that note, even though I've just realized we've been streaming for ages already and I haven't really got to the game tomorrow. We've just signed 2 very young midfielders in Kazadai and Chukwuemeka. And now we're reportedly trying to sign Bellingham and Rice. Bellingham is just 1 year older than Chukwuemeka and the same age as Kazadai.
Like, Bellingham's a baller, though.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. But what was the point in Chukwuemeka and Kazadai if we're going to sign Rice and Bellingham? Because they're both so young. How can any other young players make it? Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe the plan is Jorginho and Kante both go, bring him, say, a Bellingham and Rice, or a Rice and Caicedo, Bellingham and whatever it is, and then Chukwuemeka and those 2 come in to replace, those 2 going out, and then Chukwuemeka or maybe a Casadei step up to the first team next season and play a part.
Absolutely, but you've got to see these players. They will have their own personal ambitions, right? They will want to be regular players wherever they are. So they will probably not be particularly pleased if you put Bellingham and Rice in front of them, who they both probably realistically know they're not going to push out of the team.
It's a lot. I do agree. It's a lot of money to spend on players that are basically playing Premier League 2 and academy football. Like, you drop in 20 million potentially on Chukwuemeka. I know he's made his Prem debut, but dropping 20 million on him, who's playing the majority of his football at PL2 level, and you spent 11, 12 million pounds on Casadei, who's never played a professional game at senior level in his career. And these guys are just playing PL2 football. So I'm not really sure what the plan is for these guys, because it's not like they're sort of 16, 17. They're kind of 19, 20. So I'm not really sure what the idea is behind it.
Well, I don't think you can. If I can jump in quick, I don't think we can compare it, because if you're taking a player like Bellingham and comparing him to other players, most players would fall by the wayside, because Bellingham is like the exception because he is so good and yet so young. So it's difficult to put it against Casadei and Chukwuemeka. And there must have been a good idea to sign them, but I think it'd be difficult to hold them up as the example, those players. And I think they would help. A player like Rice, for example, I'd love to see him sign for us. But I think there is some potential still in them. And with modern football, it's become more of an expectation when you're like these 20 years old that you should have shot through at some academy and scored goals or stop goals if you're a defender, stuff like this. So I think it skewed our opinion a bit. But we do need some midfielders, and I think some young midfielders would help as well, like the Rices and the Bellinghams that you've mentioned both.
No, I agree. Like, I didn't try to use this as Chukwuemeka is good enough and Casadei aren't good enough. Not at all, because Bertrand makes a fair point. Like, Bellingham is a bit of a freak, like Haaland, like Mbappe, who at these crazy young ages, like so crazy good. But like I'm saying, right, Chukwuemeka will want to be a starter somewhere. The guy isn't 18 and ready to sit on the bench for the next 5 years. He won't be. So then what was that a necessary signing if in the end we're going to aim for Bellingham? Do you know what I mean? But I'm like, yeah, having young players around is great. But having young players around, if they have no... Because now Chukwuemeka and Casadei theoretically have some sort of hope. If Kante and Jorginho and Kovacic would have stayed a bit longer, we weren't going for a Bellingham. By the time Kova and Jorginho are, too old, phased out, blah, 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 Chukwuemeka and Casadei could theoretically be fully ready to be involved, to play. But if you have Bellingham and Rice there, well, then, they're the same age anyway. So then it's only about ability, and Bellingham and Rice are better. So then what's the point? That's all I'm thinking. Oh, no, what's the point? It sounds harsh, but it's more like I just I don't see the point in the investment. Do you know what I mean? Like, not in them as players. They're good players. They're good young players. It's always good to have around. But I don't see the point of the investment, if that makes sense. But hey, here we are. Because we've already spent so much time doing all of these things, let's get into our little quiz. And today, I don't have to play Quizmaster. We have our Quizmaster, Charlie. So we will see how much of a clown we will be made to look at today. But, you know, we'll figure it out. And my favorite thing about this, because I only saw the first slide, was Bertram calling it the Matt Law Derby. Brilliant. Absolutely love that. But yeah, let's get into that, Bertram. Let's see how much you can ridicule us.
Yes, and I'd like to first of all apologize to Charlie. I did put your credentials in, but it didn't go through. So let's see how far we can get. All right, first slide. Today, Frank Lampard manages Everton, but back in the day, he was even better at managing Chelsea's success in the form of a boatload of goals. He became Chelsea's all-time top scorer with a strike against Villa. But what number goal was his record-breaking strike?
203.
Yeah, I think it's 203. Didn't he score 202 and 203 in the same game?
Yeah, 202 and 203.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then Petr Cech was running around with Lampard on his shoulders. What a day, honestly. But yeah, I'm pretty confident it's 203. What are we saying?
Solid start from you both. You are correct. It was 203. He did score twice on the day. And there is Petr Cech, as you correctly mentioned. Moving
Wonderful.
fast on, we have the second. Which of the following statements are untrue surrounding our 2019-2020 encounter with Aston Villa away? And this is just because it was in my head. All right, first, it was Chelsea's first game of Project Restart. Second, it was RL Ruben Loftus-Cheek's first game back after their horrific injury. 3, Pedro scored a goal of the month contender. Or finally, Mount won man of the match despite Pulisic getting a goal and assist. So, which one is not true?
Only one of them is not true, is it?
Only one of them is not true.
Oh, fucking hell.
We started quite easy, and then we're straight into it here.
I kind of, for the life of me, remember what our first game.
I don't think Pedro was still at the club then.
He was. I can let in. He was.
Oh, he was still there.
Yeah, because it was Lampard's first season, wasn't it? And he left after Lampard's first season.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, sounds like donut.
So we can start. Do you remember? Okay, so does everyone remember if it was during Project Restart or not?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it was.
It was at Villa Park. I can give you that much.
I'm going to say that I reckon the Pedro scoring one is not true.
Okay, he did not score a goal of the month contender. Solid shout. Lord, do you have anything?
I'm really struggling because Villa is one of these teams why I never really remember anything about the games against them for some reason. I don't know why that is, but I'm not sure if it's due to the games or if it's due to it being Villa. I have no idea. Mount won man of the match despite Pulisic getting a goal and assist. Doesn't sound completely illogical. Pulisic was, if ever, good during Project Restart. I feel like it would be too much of a random one to pick up, that number one, for it to be fake. So that's why I'm just going to try to read Bertram's mind and think, okay, that's got to be true then. Ruben's first game back. I think Ruben's first game back is wrong. But
okay, so all right. I would also like to put myself back on front watch. He's not Monut, it is Mount, but alas, we move on. Charlie was correct. Pedro did not score a goal of the month contender. Pedro did not score a goal of the month contender. We had a Pulisic goal and assist, but Mount was man of the match. Giroud scored, and it was first game back for Loftus-Cheek and of Project Restart. We had to play them on the day that the Premier League got cancelled, so it got moved to like June.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You know why I think it is, by the way, that I never remember our games against Villa? Because their shirt looks identical to Burnley's shirt. So in my brain, they mesh into one, and I can never keep it apart. Like West Ham is obviously similar color kits, but at least they have like a very different stadium and everything. But Burnley and Villa, they're so similar, everything. I'm like, yeah. But anyway, fair play, Charlie. All right, go on.
We move on. Okay. Which player that was included in the squad for our majestic night in Munich in 2012 is born in Birmingham? A bit of a left field shout, but I think it is all right. Okay, doable. Out of these four players, which of them is born in Birmingham?
I'm going to say... I'm going to say
Judging by accent, I would say Bertrand and Cole can't be.
I think it's Cahill or Sturridge.
Yeah,
one of them two.
But Sturridge to me,
I think Sturridge is from Manchester though, because he was come through the City ranks. I mean, he could have obviously still been born in Birmingham, but I'm going to say Cahill.
We bought Cahill from Bolton, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm going to say
so
Cahill.
Really yeah, I might go Cahill as well, even though I'm not sure. But I feel like Daniel Sturridge doesn't sound like a guy from Birmingham, so I'm going to say Cahill.
I'm going to say Cahill.
Someone in the chat gave us a little bit of a tip here, but I'm going to stick with what I said. But Jake,
I'm going to stick with Cahill.
Yeah.
Well, the credibility of the quiz moves on. It is actually Daniel Sturridge on a brisk morning on the 1st of December. He was surprisingly from Birmingham. I don't know why, but the Aston Villa quiz, it was especially difficult. So at this point, I was really reaching and just searching things up. When I found out he was born in Birmingham, it was limbs. It was perfect. The others are born in like London and Bolton, as you correctly pointed out.
But he doesn't sound full on Brummy though, does he? Like Jake says, his accent is heavy. His accent is heavy, but not the average Birmingham accent, is it? But that might have other reasons. But go on.
We follow swiftly. Which of the following ex-Chelsea players has never scored against the Birmingham outfit? So we have Pedro.
So we're only talking Villa specifically, right? Not any Birmingham.
We are only talking Villa. So we have Pedro, Alonso, Willian, or Tammy. So I think one of them was quite recent.
I'm going to say Alonso's never scored against them.
But the fact that Bertram just said one of them was quite recent, that can only be Alonso, right? Because Tammy, Willian, and Pedro have all been gone for too long to say recent.
I would like Alonso scored against Villa.
I'd like to recount my statement again. Quite recent.
Okay. Now it's making me think it's Alonso. If it's now not Alonso, you've mugged me right off.
No, I think it's Alonso. I'm going to go that.
Tammy definitely scored against Villa, I feel like. Willian probably has. But the one question was like, okay, Pedro did not score an outrageous goal. So I feel like Pedro scored. Yeah, I'm gonna say Alonso as well. But
well, gents, I can lift the curtain and say you were both absolutely correct. He has not scored. I have no idea why the original question was Eden Hazard, because I thought it was Willian. I didn't remember he scored, but he did like one game in 2014. So he was the original answer, but I found out he scored, so we changed it up for Alonso. Pedro scored in the one we talked about the other week with Pato, the 4-0 win. Tammy scored recently, and Willian back in the day.
Fair play.
And
Fair play.
We move on. I think we have two left. Aston Villa have assembled a sort of Galacticos squad in context of their position in the table. Question is, which team is worth more than the villains according to Transfer? So which of the following teams of Dortmund, Napoli, Lyon, Atletico, and Juventus is more expensive than Aston Villa's squad?
And only one of them is more expensive.
Yeah, that's the point of the question. It's quite mental.
It's got to be Juventus or Atletico Madrid. It's one of them two. I'm going to say you.
I mean, they've got João Felix, they've got Griezmann, they've got Oblak. Surely it has to be Atletico.
I don't know. I reckon
Juventus
it could be
also have Vlahovic and Pogba.
Yeah, Pogba was free. I mean, I'm going to say.
Well, yeah, but that's not transfer value, is it?
Oh, yeah, true. I'm going to say Juventus.
Juventus is a shout. Laurenz, where are you going?
I'll say Atletico.
You're saying Atletico, and you are correct. Incredibly, it is the 16th placed Premier League team, and they're for context, their squad. Would you like to guess how many 100 millions their squad is worth?
Well, Villa's.
Are we rounding to 100 million number?
Yeah, we'll round. It is actually
200 million.
Or no, I'd say more.
Lawrence?
How much is ours worth? I feel like a few years ago, ours were like worth 800 million, and like City and United were like a billion. So now, obviously, inflation and stuff. So that I'm gonna say 400 million.
It's actually 505 million. They're the 6th most expensive squad in England.
In England, okay. I was like, in the world.
Yeah, it's quite mental. Yeah, let's go. The question was more, to gear towards how grotesque it is because you weren't quizzing on them, but.
Absolutely. And do you know Atletico's value by any chance?
Yeah, I think it was around early 600, as I remember, early 600.
Okay.
But you
But
you take like one of them.
João Felix
They're
and
like,
Oblak surely got to play the major part in that value, surely.
exactly, and
Marcus
they're like
Llorente as well.
all these players, and they're only Bayern in Germany was more worth. So quite interesting. We move on. Le Chiffre, Hans Gruber, and Darth Vader are all famous villains. There's another type of famous villain, though, and those who support Aston Villa. Which of the following famous A-listers do not support the claret and blue? We have Tom Hanks, Prince William, Christian Bale, and Ozzy Osbourne.
Is it just one?
One of these A-listers does not support Aston Villa.
There's
which I thought
no-
was
Okay,
quite-
Charlie, I got to know.
To be
Is Prince William a Villa fan? I know he supports someone.
yeah, he
weird,
is,
but
mate. He's a
Villa?
big Villa fan. Yeah,
Yeah.
mate. There's no way Ozzy Osbourne even knows what football is. There's no way he doesn't support Aston Villa. There's no chance. I mean, I'm not saying that Tom Hanks or Christian Bale were like obvious Villa fans, but Osborne, there's no way is he a football fan. He just can't be. So I'm going to say Ozzy Osbourne is not the Villa fan. He just can't be.
Okay, I'm feeling Ozzy Osbourne is thrown in there to do exactly what he did. Is I can't be. So it can't be in my head. It can't be the right answer. So, but Tom Hanks or Christian Bale.
A Briton and an
I
American.
would find it more weird if Christian Bale was a Villa fan. So I will say Tom Hanks.
Before I move on, I would just, do you ever think, if anyone asked you what you were doing on your Saturday night and you were thinking if Ozzy Osbourne supported Aston Villa, this is what you were doing? But I like it. It is actually Christian Bale. The night is the darkest before dawn is not something he said in his Batman suit after Villa's relegation. We have Tom Hanks and Ozzy Osbourne down on the left, incredibly, and Prince William up to the right.
No, that's mad.
Fair play. You know what? Fair play. What can I say? Yeah, fair play. I love it.
Final question. Aston Villa can be described as a diverse side with a whole host of players representing different countries. So which of the following countries do not have a player playing at Villa Park? We have Zimbabwe, Denmark, Sweden, or Argentina.
I think it could be Sweden. I'm going to go Sweden.
It would make me very happy.
I'll be honest. I know the Argentinian player, at least one. The other three...
Buendia is Argentinian, isn't he?
Sorry?
Buendia is Argentinian.
Well, then two, because Martinez, the goalie, is Argentinian as well.
Oh, yeah.
So two. I didn't even think of Buendia. Zimbabwe, I can't think of it, but probably.
But they got Marvelous and Nkamba, whatever his name was.
Yeah, might be him. But yeah,
But
it's one of those where I'm like, Belgium wouldn't pick that as a I'm gonna go.
I think it's Sweden. I think Sweden.
Yeah. But why can't I think of it? Yeah, I agree. I feel like because the Danish flag is red, right, and the Swedish flag is blue and yellow. I feel like I'd know if there was a, just from playing FIFA. I feel like that I'd know if there was a Swedish player, but I could be wrong. So I'll agree with Charlie and say Sweden, but I'm between Sweden and Denmark.
I will let the final slide speak for itself.
Any Danes? Unfortunate.
They have two Swedes, the goalkeeper and their left back, who've both played for Copenhagen as well. And finally, that was it. I hope you enjoyed it. And we move on.
We did. And JP, shout out. He did get it right with the Denmark. Fair play. Actually, both of you got it right. Fair play to you guys. Now, shall we actually talk about tomorrow's game? Because we probably should. Now, should I quickly get this up on the screen now? It takes too long. Because Villa are in a bit of a shambles, aren't they? Like, where are they in the league right now? Did you say earlier 16th?
15th.
There you go.
That was before tonight's results, though. So.
Sorry?
That was before tonight's results.
Yeah, it is true. But still, I mean, they scored 7 goals, conceded 11. They even have, teams around them have games in hand over them. So, yeah, well, at least Leeds right in front of them. It's not looking particularly great. I mean, Steven Gerrard is probably the most unlikable manager I've ever seen in my life with some of his comments he comes out with. But, well, maybe closely followed by Mikel Arteta with certain players that he picks despite certain things that have happened. But, that's a different topic for a different day. But, yeah, 2 draws recently against Forest. If you draw against Forest, you can't be very good, can you, really? 0-0 against Leeds. Scraped the win against Southampton. But they drew against Man City. Never really lost to Arsenal. Never really lost to Villa. not to Villa, to West Ham. Sorry. How are we feeling? How are we feeling, Charlie? With the injuries that we've had as well, how are you feeling ahead of the game? Do you think we can keep the run of wins going?
I think so. Look, obviously, Reece James not being available is far from ideal. But as you say, Aston Villa are in terrible form. We're doing well. So I think momentum is with us. And yes, as I said, Reece James is a big miss. But I think, if Loftus-Cheek fills in there, I think we're more than capable of getting a win. We're playing really well. Villa aren't doing well. I wouldn't expect them to cause too many problems. They've been really struggling. So I'd be disappointed if we didn't win this game. I know at some point we are going to drop points, either draw or lose, but I would be disappointed if we didn't win this game tomorrow. I think we've got all the ingredients to do it. Confidence is high. We're building some momentum. So I don't see why we would lose this game. Sorry, I can't envisage us losing this game. I'd be shocked if we did.
Yeah, they're not in great form. I mean, Villa away is never easy.
No, it's never easy. Never an easy place to go to.
No, it really isn't. Sorry about you, by the way. I tried to get rid of the slide things at the bottom and tried to remove that. And apparently, all of a sudden, I kicked you and the slides out. So my bad. I do apologize. But yeah, surely we have to win. Like, come on now. We're finally in good form, whether Reece James injured or not. Like, come on now. Everyone else is also in pretty good form, aside from maybe Sterling. Everyone else is in pretty good form. So surely that should work out, right, Bertram? I mean, your initial reaction, I saw your hand movement. Not that confident?
I was having a discussion earlier with my friends, and I kept telling them that Chelsea was the most interesting team to follow because you never know what's going to happen. And I feel like this is a typical game from us where we go to a struggling side away, a traditional club, and narrowly win or narrowly lose or something. And like you said before, I almost never remember the wins we have against Aston Villa, especially at Villa Park, because they always seem like quite sketchy as well. So I wouldn't say I'm confident. It feels like a derby where form goes out of the window, because when you go to Villa Park, the crowd gets going. I don't know, the 30 or 40 odd thousand are there. I think I would love to be as confident as Charlie is, to just go get a win, 2-0, 3-0, go back home. But as you alluded to earlier, they did draw with City, and even though they're in poor form, that's the stuff that they can do, and I think the stuff that Steven Gerrard can do and motivate them up to. So I'm not as confident. I think this is a game that will show where we're at if we're able to go to like a hostile atmosphere, even though we've already been in Milan, to go and get a win. And even if I don't have to be chewing my fingernails afterwards as well, it would be perfect. So I think it's a game to test where we are, but not as simple as the table makes it out to be.
Oh no, I agree with that. It's definitely not as simple as the table makes it out to be. Most definitely not. In general, I do hear what you're saying. Absolutely, it's always difficult, but I don't know. Once we're in a run, obviously every run comes to an end at some point, and you never expect it to end once you build the confidence, and it ends at some point, like I say. But I feel like it's not time yet for the run to end. So I do think we will win. How convincing it will be, that is a different question. Let's get to talking about what team we would like to see / we would expect to see. So far, I've put it up as a 3-4-3. And I'll start with that. Do you think that's what we should / that's what we will turn up with, Charlie? A 3-4-3?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we've got the personnel to get by. We can just shift Ruben there, or worst case scenario, put Azpilicueta there. I'd personally go with the 3. I just think it's a little bit better. We can, we're more used to it. I think we play better football in it, and with just one player missing from the lineup, then I don't really see any reason to change formation. We obviously switch formations, in game anyway, so it doesn't really make too much difference between if we go with a 4 or 3. But personally, I'd go with a 3. I think we can just stick Ruben in there and just carry on as we were, basically.
It's absolutely a shout. I mean, I will have an interesting shout for in terms of who to play in positions when we get there. But in terms of formation, I probably agree. Like, we've beat a couple of teams now with playing this. Why go away from it? I mean, like, the way it works, as much as I'm usually an advocate for play a back 4, while it's working, why change it? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no need to change it when you've won the last 3 games, 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, with twice being against AC Milan. I don't think there's much that you need to change if you don't have to. But Bertram, would you agree 3-4-3 is what one should go for? Whether it's in the end a full-on 3-4-3 or whether it might shift into a 1-2 in the forward areas, that is a conversation we'll get to towards the end of this formation discussion. But in general, with at least starting with a 3-4.
Yeah, I think it's definitely what would make the most sense. Even like Charlie said, we're only missing one player, and if Graham Potter has the idea that Ruben Loftus-Cheek is the person to exchange with Reece James, he's more comfortable in a 3-4-3 than he would be in a 4-back. So I think this is definitely what makes the most sense, and I think the important thing now is to just keep playing the players that are in form. Although I would love to see him change it up a bit. For example, playing a Hakim Ziyech if he feels comfortable with it at right wing back. But I think, as you said, this is not the time for the run to stop and to just play the best players, go out there, get a win, and get back to London quickly.
Absolutely. All right then. First one that we need to get out the way, and I'll start with you, Bertram. Does Kepa keep his place? Yeah.
I think definitely. There's nothing that talks that he shouldn't. Is it four clean sheets in a row? I think he's shown confidence, and I'm happy about how he's played. 3 in a row, guy. Yeah, it is 4 wins in a row. It is. Yeah. Nothing really to say. And I think it's a good idea that we have two good goalkeepers to put in. But Kepa keeps his place. No more.
I would agree. Charlie, would you agree as well?
Yeah, mate, full house on that one. There's no reason for him to be dropped. Isn't there anything wrong to warrant being dropped? We've kept 3 clean sheets on the spin. He seems to be building a good relationship with the back line. There's no reason to change it, so he should continue.
Absolutely. Now, when we get to the what I'm trying to say, I can't even think of words. When we're trying to think of the centre backs. Looking at the next games, obviously then on Wednesday, we play against Brentford. And on Saturday, we play against United. And then on Tuesday after, we have another big Champions League game against Salzburg. So my thinking is, us knowing that Thiago Silva can't play every game, do we rest him tomorrow or do we rest him on Wednesday against Brentford?
I'd rest him Wednesday, mate, because we've had Tuesday to recover through to Sunday. I'd rest him Wednesday to be fit for the weekend against United.
And I completely agree. Hence, Thiago Silva is in the team. Go on.
But he would be coming up against a better striker when we play Brentford, arguably. Ivan Toney.
That is true. That is most definitely true. But yeah, I don't really know how I want to explain it. It just, I think we can deal with Toney regardless. Like we can deal with everyone, I think. I'm more trying to look out how to best use Silva's fitness. Yeah, I don't know. I do see what you're saying with the Toney thing. Do you see that as a valid point, Charlie, in terms of to change?
Yeah, it's a valid point for sure. But I think we can get by without Thiago Silva. I don't think, but again, he might play both games. Who knows? But
yeah, he might just play both games.
He might just play both. But no, I think it makes more sense to play him in this one than the Brentford game. But I also get the point that obviously Toney will be difficult to play against. But I think, we've got the capabilities to keep him quiet.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, on the one hand, I would feel harsh. I mean, I think we all probably in agreement that Koulibaly will and should play here, right, Bertrand?
Yeah, I was just thinking it might make sense probably mostly on Brentford to try, maybe if we wanted to save some fitness on our centre backs, to try Cucurella, because I think Aston Villa might be more physical. But I think if we played the back three that played against Milan, I'd be very happy and very secure. So yeah, Koulibaly definitely stays in.
Charlie, for you as well, Koulibaly.
Yeah, mate. He's playing really well at the moment. He's getting a good run on his side. He seems to be adapting from Serie A. I thought he had his best game in a Chelsea shirt in the San Siro. Yes. So, agreed. Yeah, for sure. It makes no sense to switch it up.
I now have a little bit of a shout. I would start Aspie here.
Oh, no, behave.
No, wait. I personally think right centre-back is the one position where I most trust him anyway, because, well, least running at centre-back. But I have a reason for this. You know how against Salzburg, we did the whole Sterling at left wing-back thing? You know how Potter did that with Trossard, the left wing back thing.
Yeah.
Now, it isn't on the left, but now that we have Reece James out available, I'm not as confident as you guys are that Graham Potter will automatically agree with Thomas Tuchel and play Loftus-Cheek wing back.
So we could see Pulisic pushed right up high on the right-hand side.
I'm putting a winger here. Like, you know, how we had Sterling here against Salzburg, I'm putting a winger here. And that's why I'm picking Aspie. So here's a kind of a right back in this right centre-back spot, because I don't want to put Chalobah in this situation where he then needs to be too right-backy and then struggle with it, because the winger in front of him doesn't help him defensively enough. Hence why someone that's more comfortable with the wide areas, hence I'm picking Aspie. And then I'm going to pick a winger here. We'll get to that. But you can say you would still rather Chalobah, but in general, what would
I'd
you
still
think
rather
of that
Chalobah.
idea?
I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, and I can see it being a possibility. Like in the first game, as you said, having Sterling and Pulisic, you know, pushed right up high, basically playing as wingers rather than wing backs.
I would only do it on one side. On this side, I would play Cucurella or Chilwell. But
yeah, but do you know what I mean? But there's options. You know, I think that's certainly a thought. I mean, I don't know if he'll go with it or not. Let's see. Ruben's been doing really well in midfield, so it probably makes that decision a little bit harder. But
that's what I'm saying, though.
I wouldn't say
Ruben out here.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if Potter will do that. That's what I'm.
I wouldn't say it's a no, but I don't think equally Chalobah's done nothing to warrant being dropped.
No, that is true.
So I think we should just stick the same. You know, we've kept 3 clean sheets on the spin with this back line. What's the point? Yeah. There's no point switching it up for me. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I do hear it. You know, just to elaborate on why I did this, because I'm not so sure he will pick Ruben here. That's why I feel like he will play Aspie wingback, and I don't really want Aspie. I know it worked away at Milan, but away at Milan and when he came on for thing, and it also worked against Wolves, fair enough. But Aspie won't always be as good as he was against Wolves, offensively, and therefore I'm like, we're playing Villa. We're in confident mood. Like the way we beat Villa is, you know, they got a draw against City. They didn't get that by, you know, going toe-to-toe with them. They got that by parking the bus. So do I want Aspie to be our decisive guy on the right side? No. That's why I'm thinking put someone else there. And that's why I had this idea. But Bacham, what do you think of the idea? Would you stick with Chalobah, or are you potentially a fan of the idea and then therefore go with Aspie at right centre-back?
Well, ideally, I wouldn't play Aspie, but he's performed well in the last 2 games. Looking at the Aston Villa attack, it's more like pacey, technical players. So I have an idea that would suit Aspie more than a tall physical striker that he'd had to go in a duel with. I think it depends, like you've said, on the right wing back, on who he chooses to play, or right midfielder. Because if he chooses a winger option, like you've alluded to, you're choosing, I think it makes a lot of sense. But if I'm honest, I would start Chalobah as well, because I don't think he would need the rest as much right now as maybe a Thiago Silva would. So that's just my preference, but I do see where you're coming from. And my only issue is that when we're playing away teams, they tend to press more than when we play at home against teams. So Aspie could maybe be susceptible to that. I would trust Chalobah more with the ball, but that's just my personal preference, if I'm honest. So I would go Chalobah as well. I'd be more confident in seeing Chalobah on the team sheet tomorrow.
Fair play. 2v1, absolutely no problem. We'll put Chalobah on screen. Let's do the left side first, and before we get to the right side. Chilwell, Cucurella, realistically, it's those 2 options. Of course, theoretically, it could be like Sterling or Pulisic, but I think surely in the current situation, if we play a winger at wing back, we should be doing it on the right side, not on the left side, at least in my opinion, with the current players that we have available. So therefore, in my opinion, between Cucurella and Chilwell, I wasn't impressed with Chilwell against Milan, I can't lie. I will also say, I also wasn't impressed with Cucurella against Wolves. So, you know, that is a tough one. But who would you pick, Bertram, at wing back, left wing back?
It's difficult. It's difficult. I hope you've chosen Charlie before. I think I probably would give it to Chilwell as well. And it could be a bit harsh on Cucurella, if I'm honest. But I'd like to see him. I think he still needs to play himself in form, and I think this is one of the times to do it. So I just keep playing him. Maybe even give Cucurella a run out midweek. So I think tomorrow I choose Chilwell for the left wing back.
Okay. Charlie, what about you?
I would go Cucurella. I think Chile's played a reasonable amount of football. The whole point of having two good options there is to mix it up. They'll start one will start tomorrow, one will start on Wednesday night against Brentford. So for me, I'll probably just go Cucurella on this one, just for a personal preference. But in all honesty, there's not really that much between it. But I would go with Cucurella.
It's an interesting shout, because if you make it one today, the other on Wednesday, I would, because I see Brentford as pressing harder than Villa. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's what I feel Brentford as. They're always really just a ball achy team to play against because they press you so hard. In phases of games, not always and not everywhere on the pitch, but when they do press, they press you well and they press you hard. That's what I think is their biggest strength when they perform well. And I trust Cucurella more under pressure than I do Chilwell. So if it's like Charlie says, one or the other today and Wednesday, I'd probably play Chilwell today, but I'd just play Cucurella in both games. And then against Man United, you can then talk about Chile again for the little bit of extra pace and the little bit of extra goal threat. That's what I'm feeling. But I would for tomorrow, I would also pick Cucurella actually. Also, with me still potentially picking a right wing back here rather than Aspie, a winger here rather than Aspie, just because I still don't trust Potter to actually pick Ruben, even though I would obviously love it. But yeah, and I just trust Cucurella a little bit more with defending than I do Chilwell, if I'm honest. But yeah, there we go then. Other side, Charlie, I'll let you go first on this one then.
I'll go Ruben.
Okay.
For this, just because he can play that hybrid role as well. He can fill in as a third man in midfield if necessary. He's proven that he can do it. And I just think it makes sense. I mean, there's an outside chance that, it could be Christian Pulisic, maybe. I know he doesn't particularly like it, but there is a potential that it could be that. But for me, it's Ruben. It makes sense. He's better than Azpilicueta at right wing back in Aspie's current form and current state where he's at in his career. So for me, I think it makes sense to put Ruben there, but I wouldn't completely rule out potentially him deciding to go with Pulisic there.
My thinking is I'm a little bit like Cover, obviously playing with that knee injury. I'm like, I don't want to overplay Cover. And because of that, I'm not sure if Ruben is, because if Cover doesn't play midfield, then I want Ruben and Jorginho midfield, because I still don't want to start like Zakaria or Chukwuemeka or whatever. So, and if I have that in mind, we'll get to the midfield in a minute. I would actually not pick Pulisic. I'd pick Sterling, and it would be the only position that I'd keep Sterling in the team for. If he's not there, I wouldn't play him. So if Sterling is in my team, it's there or nowhere. So I'd happily take Ruben. I'm just not sure if Cover maybe should get rested, and therefore Ruben needs to play midfield. So I'll throw the Sterling shout in there, but obviously Bertram, if he picks Ruben now, it's Ruben. Absolutely. So Bertram, what is your perspective? Would you go for Ruben? Would you go maybe Sterling, Pulisic, Aspie? What are you feeling?
Well, I see both of your points, to be honest. When we played Wolves, right, was Gallagher, was he a right wing back, right midfielder?
No, he played right. Gallagher basically played right wing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is gonna be a completely left field shout, or right field shout. I would love to see a Hakim Ziyech in here tomorrow, and I understand that it's not, the most realistic
pace to be a wing back. If I'm honest, I know he did it once on the Tuchel, but I think he doesn't have the pace.
I see. But okay, this is something I've heard. There's a small trend right now in teams. I know Udinese has it, and it's kind of happened also with Brighton, where the right wing back is typically like a ball playing midfielder, so that they get the ball more, and they can spread it around. And I think that's something Ziyech might have missed, and I think he has the work rate for it. And I also think it could tie in from the fact that he has a left foot, and Potter famously used like a right-footed on the left side and a left-footed on the right side to cut in, I think. So I would love to see it happen. Whether
can I just add something to it, and then you can say whether you still stick with it. My thinking is, because this player is usually Mount, and if it isn't Mount, it's been Gallagher, this position. Like when Mount was subbed off at halftime, Gallagher came on for him there. And then against Wolves, Gallagher played here. So this means this player isn't a real winger as it is, meaning they're not here. They're more like this position, meaning I want whoever the wing back is to fill this position And I'm not sure if Ziyech will do that, because Ziyech will want to be here and spread balls. And then who is there? So that's why I'm thinking. And I'm not even sure if Ruben will do that either. To be fair, under Thomas Tuchel, Mount was still here and Ruben was here and it worked. So fair enough. But that's where my winger thing is coming from, because I'm like, why not? And then fill that, because I don't want to go back to a Thomas Tuchel situation where we then don't have enough players in the final third in the box. And I don't know, I'm just a little bit concerned that we allow ourselves to slip into that again, just to get a bit too comfortable, just play too many we need to play our proper wing backs and play Cucurella and Aspie, and then no one's filling roles as they should. And yet that's why I pick a winger. And I'm not sure if Ziyech would, number one, have the pace to make those runs but then basically play the cutbacks from here, which I need the wing back to do. Because while I think you make a good point, if you switch it, and Mount plays there, and then it's either Sterling or Pulisic on this side, then Ziyech, I think, becomes a very valid option at wing back. But I think if it's Mount and Gallagher at the right side, which it has been the last couple of games, then I think you need someone with more pace than Ziyech over here. What do you think of that, Bradram?
Well, I do see your point, but I think because of the lack of players we have, I think it would offer something else, and it is more like a hopeful shout than a realistic shout, because I think I would be safest with Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well. But I would hope that you can get something out of Hakim Ziyech, because even if he doesn't bomb all the way up like we want him to, he still does possess a magical left foot that has opportunities to create something. And we don't want to watch a game where he only crosses, let's be honest. We've watched far too many of those under Thomas Tuchel, but I think it would give us a different edge. But I do see where you're coming from with Sterling, but it would take some of his offensive qualities that we haven't seen that many of, which is fair the last couple of games, but it would take some of his offensive qualities off if he's just playing on that side because he isn't able to cut in. But I think it's a difficult one, and I think it would be safest from Graham Potter to do, as you've suggested, to put a Ruben Loftus, or as Charlie suggested, to put Ruben Loftus-Cheek in. But I think this is probably the most interesting position to see what he does tomorrow, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. I mean, if I had to do a predicted 11, I would be willing to put money on Aspie starting at right wing back, if I'm honest. But I hope I'm wrong. Let's say, just quickly before we move on to the midfielders, and I'll go with you first, Charlie. What's your thoughts on this suggestion by Laborde here? Do you think he'd ever put Cucurella on the right side, or is that a crazy shout? Play Chilwell on the left and then play almost an inverted wing back. Like on one or two occasions, Reece James played left wing back.
I don't think it's outrageous. It's not outrageous at all. No, I mean, I don't know how good Cucurella is with his right foot and whatnot, but he can obviously cut in. I mean, it's not a bad shout. I mean, if anyone knows Cucurella well, it's Graham Potter. He brought him to the Premier League from Getafe. Obviously, he knows him from Brighton, and it wouldn't be the most outrageous shout. And I wouldn't 100% discount it. I mean, I personally can't see it happening, but it's definitely an option that could be looked at.
Okay. I think we'll leave Ruben on the screen because, if it's not Sterling, I'd pick Ruben. So yeah, we have to pick someone. Otherwise, it's three different ones, and then what? So let's go with Ruben then. With that said, Bertram, do you think Kovacic is in a position to play again? So then, therefore, it's just Kovacic and Jorginho?
I hope he is, but I think I'd like to see Ruben play tomorrow. If he's playing right wing back. If he isn't, I'd love to see him play tomorrow. I think Kovacic and Jorginho is a solid midfield. I think the most important player tomorrow in the midfield position is Jorginho. But if Kovacic is ready to play, I think we should give him the chance to go out and do so. And I wouldn't complain if he did start.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I do think he needs to get rested at some point. And I'm a bit like, do I want Kova and Silva rested in the same game? I'm not sure. But here we are. Now we've picked Ruben at right wing back. What other option do we have? So, Charlie, would you pick Kova and Jorginho in midfield then?
Yeah, I think it's the obvious choice. I'd be absolutely shocked if Zakaria started. I can't see that happening. I think it would also be a surprise if Chukwuemeka were to start. I don't really think that's his natural position.
He's a bit like Gallagher. And it's just not the sixth.
And I can't see Gallagher starting in the pivot again. So yeah, it would make sense for it to be those two. Obviously, I would go Ruben and Jorginho if it was if Aspie was to play at right wing back.
Would you at all see the possibility of playing one of these and then potentially replace Kovacic with Gallagher and then play a front two?
Yeah, that's also an option. That's an option. You could have Sterling and Aubameyang up top. It's a possibility. A lot of pace. I mean, yeah, that's also an option. You could go Mount and Gallagher as eights. That would also work. I don't know how likely that is to be, but again, even if we start with a 3-4-3, that can still change. That can still change during the game. So
Absolutely.
Again, that's another possibility. Like, despite Reece James being out, there are quite a few options we can still take.
Yeah, true. Bacham, what do you think of that idea? If it is a 3 at the back, but then a 3-man midfield, which game did we use that in? Was it Salzburg? I think against Salzburg we did that, where we had 1 6 and 2 8s in a 3-back. Do you think that's at all a potential? I'm more thinking this to potentially give Cover a rest. That's more my idea, because I'm like, okay, if it's not Cover and Ruben plays wing back, then who plays as a double pivot? So I'm like, okay, then just don't play a double pivot, and then that allows you other players like a Gallagher to be a more valid option in midfield. That's my thinking.
I think I would find it unlikely tomorrow, because he did try in the first game and he hasn't gone back to it since.
That's true.
And I think optimally, if we want to play our players who are in form, it would have to be in a typical 4-3 or a 3-4-3, where we got some of the offensive players who are showing quality in. I wouldn't complain it. I would love to see it happen. But I think for me, I would prefer the 3-4-3. And I think, for example, you put Mount in. He's had 2 very, very good performances, and he's had them in that floating 9 role, or not 9, floating winger role up front. So I think we need to continue playing him in form. And I think he, at worst case, he always has the opportunity when playing Mount to drop him in to the cam center midfield spot. So I think this is what's most likely tomorrow. But I do get what you're saying about resting Kovacic. I don't know if tomorrow's the game, though, to be honest.
Absolutely. Now, so far, I've had Mount on the screen. But obviously, he did miss training yesterday and did have a scan on a little bruise that he seemed to have picked up in Milan. And with obviously a lot of games coming up, and Mount being the only player that has started the only outfield player that has started every game under Graham Potter, even though he was subbed off at half-time on Tuesday, is this maybe a time where Mount should get a rest and then you just play Gallagher? And then Mount comes, just because he had this bruise and, to make sure he doesn't overdo it. Like I say, he's the only outfield player that started every game so far.
I presume that scan that he went for on his thigh injury, as a precaution, didn't actually show anything up, because there's been no.
I think he's fine, but I'm thinking, well, there was clearly something there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to have a scan. So maybe just let him sit out this one, or bring him on as a sub for only 20 minutes rather than overdoing it.
He's in really good form though, so it's really hard not to play him. I mean, for me personally,
he can't play every game, bro. No matter who he can't. No one can play.
No, he can't. I'd personally start Conor Gallagher in this game instead of Mount.
But it's Gallagher, not like potentially Pulisic and Sterling with Aubameyang or something. You're thinking Gallagher?
No, I think Gallagher. It's clear that Gallagher is ahead of Pulisic in the pecking order, because otherwise Pulisic would have come on at half-time in the San Siro. So it's clear
we were 2-0 up and kind of defending a lead, so maybe
but still,
I
think it's clear that Gallagher is ahead of Pulisic. For me personally, people might disagree with that, but I think the evidence would suggest that Gallagher is ahead of Pulisic right now. And I'd play him there with Sterling and Aubameyang.
Yeah. For me, like Laborde said, hard to drop him right now. He's balling. For me, I'm not dropping Mount. I'm only giving him a rest to make sure he's fresh by the time we play Brentford and United. That's more my thing. Rather than this is not a dropping I'm doing. But I do also understand if people say, now you just got to leave him in there with the form he's in. I do also understand that completely. I mean, Bacham, Charlie pick Gallagher. Would you pick Gallagher? Would you pick Mount? Would you potentially pick Sterling, Pulisic on that side? Ziyech potentially in this position now that we didn't give you him at wing back?
Yeah, I'm gutted. No, I think it's very interesting because Mount, he is in form, and I think ideally I would start him, seeing as he is in form. But if there is precaution around the injury, I can also see dropping him. And if I were to drop Mount, I think Gallagher is a more than suitable option, because he brought us this crazy wild energy against Wolves, which I thought that not that we lacked, but that he really showed and kind of brought the game up in a level, or brought it up in intensity when Wolves want to try and slow it down. And I think he gives you some of the things you'd want from a right winger, pressing, always moving and stuff like that. So I think it would give us something to kind of battle the low block. So I think I would start Gallagher if I wasn't allowed to start Mount.
What we haven't mentioned yet, presuming that up front it will be Aubameyang, is Havertz a shout for that wide position if Mount doesn't start? Or would you pick Gallagher over Havertz?
No, I'd pick Gallagher over Havertz for me.
Me too, I think. Me too, to be honest with you.
I would as well. I'm not a big fan of Kai in this wide position, even though he's actually the wide right areas is actually where he was very good at Dortmund, not Dortmund, Leverkusen, of course. But when we've played in that, I've never really been a big fan. There's been maybe one or two games that were a bit different where he looked good and live. I can't remember which game it was. One under Potter where he played in this wide right area. No, Tuchel's last game, Zagreb away. He played this wide right area, and I really liked this performance. Now everyone else was a bit shit, but that day Havertz was actually pretty good. But otherwise, I wasn't really a big fan of him on the right side, so I'd probably agree with the Gallagher. Now on the other side, then I will say first and foremost, I would pick Christian Pulisic. The guy started on the weekend, scored, played really well, and then wasn't even used as a sub on Tuesday. So I think the guy deserves to start, if I'm honest, and Sterling doesn't. So that's why I would pick Christian Pulisic. And then if he plays well, maybe he keeps his spot. If he doesn't, Sterling comes back in Wednesday. Simple as that. I would do that. If you guys both pick Sterling, obviously we will put Sterling on screen. Go on.
I think Pulisic will start one of these next two games for me. I'd be shocked if he didn't start one of these next two games. And it's not because Sterling. I know you think Sterling's not been that great recently, and that's fair enough. I think he's struggled a little bit in the last couple of games, not showing what he has done sort of in the opening sort of few games of the season. But he's still very much important to how we play. I would personally start him, but I'm very, very much aware that I think he will be rotated in either this game or the Brentford game. I'd be surprised if he started both. It just depends which one is better suited for Christian Pulisic. I think he does deserve an opportunity because when he started against Wolves, he did well. I'm surprised again that out of the 5 subs, the game done, we didn't see him at all in the San Siro. So maybe Potter said to him, "Look, I'm not going. You haven't been used tonight, but I'm going to start you."
That's
Saturday.
what I'm thinking. That's exactly my thought as well.
I mean, he's going to start one of these two games. I think why not? I'd just go with Pulisic just to see what happens.
Absolutely, and obviously, even if Sterling's on the bench, doesn't mean he can't come on after an hour.
Exactly.
There you go. I mean, Bertram, what do you think of it? What would you think about Pulisic starting over Sterling, or would you be drastically against that?
Well, a lot speaks for him starting, to be honest. He played a very good game against Wolves, and we've all been saying that, when all those Americans were coming after us on Twitter, if he played well, he would keep getting played. And I think, as you've both alluded to, he didn't play a minute in the San Siro. It alludes to him playing tomorrow. I thought he played well, so on form, I think he deserves it. And I also think Sterling deserves to be dropped. I don't think he's been particularly good these last 2 games. There is an argument to be made that he might have scored if Aubameyang didn't come in, but you never know that. And also, he might need a rest as well, even though he didn't play the full game against Wolves. I can't even remember if he came on. But I think on form, Christian Pulisic deserves to start. And I think it's important that, Graham Potter also honors that, because unless something happened in training, I can't see a reason why he shouldn't. From us outsiders, I think it would make a lot of sense for Christian Pulisic to have it, even though he might lack the creativity of a Mount-type player. I don't know if the others can affirm that, maybe from a vintage Kovacic performance. But, if he keeps playing like he did against Wolves, I see no reason not to start him, especially if Sterling keeps playing like he has done the past few games.
Absolutely. The one thing maybe we should mention is, obviously, against Wolves, Pulisic played kind of as a wing-back. Obviously, we had kind of attacked in just a 4-back in the end, and then Pulisic wasn't at the back. But Pulisic was kind of a wing-back, which allowed him to constantly be wide, which we finally saw what a difference that can make to a player, whether he's here, always crowded, or here, where he has the wide areas and then can cut in. So I'm not sure whether he'd actually be as good in this position as he was against Wolves. But with the situation of squad that we have right now, I think, here, unless we play Aspi here and then Pulisic over there, which obviously is an option, but I think I'd rather him here than, then Aspie here and then Pulisic there, and give him a shout and see if it's the same problems in this position as he had under Thomas Tuchel, or if it's a little bit different and better for him under Graham Potter. But then up front, no Armando Broja or Kai Havertz shouts. Aubameyang stays in the team.
No, it's got to be mate. He's in form. 3 in his last 3. Like you've got to play him.
I could play devil's advocate on a Broja.
To get a start, by the way, I really think he needs to start soon. But yeah, you have to stick with.
But there's no justification for dropping Aubameyang at the moment.
No, exactly. There you go.
Maybe for a rest.
That's the problem. Well, I mean, he came off in midweek on Tuesday. He came off on Tuesday night, didn't play the whole game,
and he didn't start Wolves last week.
And he didn't play against Wolves at all.
There you go. So he kind of had his rest in already. I think Aubameyang will next get rested after United. I think Aubameyang will play tomorrow. I think he'll play Brentford, and I think he'll play United, and after that he'll get a rest again.
Yeah, he won't play Zagreb or Salzburg, I don't think.
Actually, maybe Salzburg away. I'm not sure if he'll rest him there. But maybe Havertz away at Salzburg wouldn't actually be that bad. Or Aubameyang, or Broja. Also maybe Broja against Brentford. I wouldn't hate it, but that's... Well, we're talking about tomorrow mainly. But Bacha, would you stick with Aubameyang, or would you like to change it up there?
Nah, you've convinced me. I think I'm just so happy that we actually have a 9 who's scoring, and it's good goals as well. 3 and 3 as you said, and I got confused about the Wolves rest. So I think we should just keep playing him, keep racking up goals, and he's definitely also a striker that you can begin to fear again in the Premier League. So yeah, I'd be happy to see Aubameyang tomorrow.
Absolutely. Fair enough. I mean, Brent Curry did say, Aspie will play tomorrow. Did you not see him against Wolves? And to be honest, that is not an outrageous thing to say. He was very good against Wolves at wing-back. He was also decent at wing-back when he came on for Reece James against AC Milan. Of course, that was AC Milan down to 10 men and us being 2-0 up. So not exactly why the atmosphere maybe was difficult. Everything else was not difficult about that. So again, if we did a full predicted 11, I'm very sure Aspie starts at right wing back. I'm just then not sure if maybe Pulisic is here an option. But hey, this is what we picked. Whether this will happen or not is a very different situation. And this is only what we'd like to see anyway. At the end of the day, it's all down to Mr. Graham Potter. And with these injuries, we need magical Potter. Like we honestly do. Like not just for the one-off game, but for the future. Because we can't play Ruben here all the time. Because Kovacic can't play every game. Even Jorginho can't play every game. Jorginho shouldn't also play every game because against certain opposition, he's not ideally suited for it. So we can't play all 3 of these every game. So we will need to figure something out for this here, whether it's Aspie, whether it's a Pulisic or a Sterling over here, but potentially whatever it may be, we need to figure something out. And I hope Graham Potter does. I truly hope Graham Potter does. And lastly, boys, what we need is a score prediction. Bertram, I'll go with you first. What do you reckon?
Alright, I will reckon we win. We win 4-1. We'll go 2-0 up quite quickly. They'll get one back, but we will end it with a 4-1 win.
I'm a big fan. I mean, it would ruin our clean sheet record, but if it's in in turn for scoring 4 goals, I'm all for it. Charlie, what will be your score prediction?
I think it'll win 2-1.
Okay.
I think it'll be. I think it'll be closer than people think it's going to be. It's a tough place to go, but I think we've got more than enough to see them off. So I'll go 2-1.
Okay. Now I've said 2-1 ahead of all of our 4 recent wins. So the superstitious guy inside of me is saying, well, I got to just say 2-1 again because then we keep winning no matter the exact result in the end. But I'm gonna change that. If we then don't win tomorrow, then number 1, you can blame me, and number 2, you can be sure I will predict 2-1 for the rest of the season. But I will say, I'm feeling the 3-1 that Brent Curry put in the chat. I can't lie because I feel like would you another goal conceded at some point, and I'd rather get it out of the way in the when we are winning anyway, rather than conceding that stupid goal against United. Do you know what I mean? And then finish 1-1 again or whatever. So, if we need to concede one, maybe get it out the way and hopefully still win, of course. I'll say 3-1. I'll say 3-1. And yeah, I hope so. I just hope we win, right? I'm confident that we'll win, but it's always a little bit nerve-wracking. And one thing I will say, it's pissing me right off, these kickoff times tomorrow. Number 1, why is Chelsea and Villa playing, 1 hour apart, but still, same time as the El Clasico? Cheers for that. And also, Liverpool City is straight after, as I will be streaming. Excuse me, am I not allowed to enjoy football? Who's scheduling these games? Huh? Come on now. I will put the City Liverpool game on in the background here as we do stream tomorrow, but yeah, still annoying. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just realized they drew Man City 1-1. Yeah, exactly, Brent. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time around this one. It's been a fairly long one anyways. Please do make sure to follow Charlie and subscribe to his channel, The Blues Brothers. The link is down in the description, as well as please follow Bertram on his Twitter, Won It Twice, which I think is still a fantastic tag to have. And also big shout out again for playing Quizmaster today and also preparing the questions as always. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, I appreciate you very much. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be wonderful. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Just one click of a button that doesn't cost you any time or any money, and it really helps me share these videos to more people because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards, and we'll see you next time.